Hello and welcome to Scuttlebutt, episode 38. I'm Nick, and before I throw out to Vic, I just want to mention that June is PTSD Awareness Month. So if you find yourself uneducated on PTSD, it's a great time to reach out. There's a lot of resources out there. We've gone over a few of them on Scuttlebutt. In fact, Vic's episode today, he interviews Benjie Manibog, Gunnery Sergeant USMC retired, who has a foundation called 6 Feet Above, whose purpose is to use skateboarding to help veterans cope. And if you are suffering from PTSD, there is help out there. We've talked to a bunch of them on the podcast. We've talked to Tom Schumann and his PB Abate initiative. We've talked to Jeff Schultz, who's involved with MVP. We've talked to some chaplains. We've talked about mental health with Miles Vining. So if you need a place to start, listen to a few episodes of Scuttlebutt. Also reach out to the VA and just find what you need. Anyway, we're here for you. And thrown back out to Vic in California.
Hey everybody, welcome to Scuttlebutt. I'm Vic. I'm here. I'm so honored actually today. I'm sort of geeking out right now, man. But I'm here with Benjie Manibog. I'm not going to really do your story any justice, but just, I guess, to hit the real quick wave tops. Here's another Cali guy, so feeling good being here with you. But you're someone who joined the Marine Corps, did some absolutely wonderful things as a Marine Raider, and then transitioned out and now are just doing so much to give back to people who are in uniform, coming out of uniform, and are finding that maybe that transition wasn't quite so easy, or maybe they weren't as prepared as they maybe thought they were. So Benjie, thank you again, dude, so much for having me here and for sitting down with me. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I appreciate just this opportunity to tell my story. I absolutely love people. I love hearing people's stories and then sharing my story as well. And there's just so much that we could get out of hearing each other's stories. And it's just such an amazing opportunity to be able to do that. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So retired gunny. So what was, before we get into your time in uniform, kind of give us a little bit of like what brought you to the Yellow Footprints.
Yeah, it's in fact, I had no desire to go step foot on those Yellow Footprints in any way. In fact, I was actually totally against it. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, throughout LA County, kind of moved around a lot as a kid. Just unfortunate circumstances in my family, just poor choices that were made. And that's not to, bash my family in any way. I know no one's family is perfect. In fact, every family is dysfunctional, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like synonymous with family, right?
Exactly. It's because people aren't perfect. And so that's why there's no perfect family, because, people are imperfect. But I had a very interesting upbringing, just moving around with different family members based off of the poor choices that were made, and including my own. And I was that rebellious kid. And when I say rebellious, that's putting it very lightly. I had a real problem with authority. And I think a lot of it was because I was acting out from the feelings of not having my dad around, or not having a father figure around. And my poor mom is, single mother with 4 kids, and she's trying to go to night school while also working and trying to, provide for us. And then this stepdad comes in, and of course I'm going to rebel against that guy coming in and taking
the same thing, man. So no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But consequently, what ended up happening is I got very heavily involved in drugs and alcohol at an early age. And it was, it was, I thought that I was on the right path, because in my mind, when I got involved into those drugs and alcohol, and I got involved with those friends that were in the punk rock community, we were all together, united against authority. I felt that brotherhood, and I felt that sense of belonging. And with that, it was like right when the Iraq war kicked off, 2003, or actually, 2001, when we went into Afghanistan. I was really heavily involved in just against the war and against everything going on, because that's what I heard in the music. And that's what I heard all my friends say.
Yeah, anti-establishment, man. Yeah,
exactly.
sure.
So I was like, yeah, down with Bush, down with authority. The military is the most stupid thing you could do. You're going to die for your government. You're just going to be cannon fodder.
Yeah.
And so, I was just ignorant, right? I was ignorant because I didn't know anything about the military. In fact, the Marine Corps, I didn't know there was MOSs in the Marine Corps. I thought when you joined the Marine Corps, you were just like a soldier. It's like, here's your gun. And like, and like
this
you go.
This is my rifle. This is my gun.
Exactly. Yeah. I was so ignorant about it. And what ended up happening is I got into a lot of trouble with stealing from liquor stores, from various different places, getting into fights, vandalizing, doing all sorts of things. Addicted to meth and cocaine. And I found myself at a point where I was at this continuation school, and I was 18, and I realized just, if I pause and took a second, I don't know exactly when this moment was, but I just remember one day just saying, man, my life is going nowhere. And I could foresee everything that my future would become if I continued down this path, right? I had friends that went to prison. I had just a lot of family members that were kind of messed up. And unfortunately, it's like some of those people are still that way, right? Mm-hmm. And they're still dealing with those consequences. Even if they got out of those situations, they're still dealing with the second and third order effects of those negative choices. And so I was able to kind of foresee that in my future and say, you know what, I don't want that. So I remember seeing this commercial. It was a Navy SEAL commercial.
Yeah.
It had, Godsmack playing, and it was like, and he's like on the water, and they're coming out. And I was like, man, that looks awesome. Walked into the Navy recruiting office. And again, because I was some cracked out looking kid, I weighed 117 pounds, probably had a mohawk at the time, leather jacket and studs. And I walk in there and I'm like, hey, you saw this commercial on TV.
They're like, dude, am I getting punked right now?
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, no, you don't qualify at all, because they gave me one of those practice ASVABs and I bombed it. So they're like, well, you're definitely not going to make it. So like, here's the list of jobs that could be available. And it was like bosun's mate and all these ones that like I just didn't want to do, And I was like, well, this sucks. So I remember walking out of there just feeling defeated, and there's a Marine Corps recruiter watching me walk out, looking sad for myself, and he's like, hey, what's up, buddy? And what's interesting about that guy that scooped me up, a year prior, he came to our continuation school to try to recruit some folks, and I told him to his face, I'm like, the Marine Corps is the stupidest thing, like, you're gonna die for oil, and he didn't remember me at all. So I was just like, oh, thank God. Like, I saw his face, I was like, oh shit. And but he scooped me up, and what's really cool, he ended up becoming one of the most positive role models in my life at that time. And he showed me what it was like to work hard for something, and when you do, you could achieve great results, right? Like if you really stop that victim mentality and start putting on that victor mindset, then you could see that it doesn't matter what you did before. It's all about who you are today and what you want to achieve tomorrow.
And he was like, it wasn't one of these things where he's just asking you to come in to do police functions and stuff. He was like in your hip pocket, as they say, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because he saw my circumstances, and he was like, hey, you're going to this continuation school. Like, these are what your credits are right now. This is what it's going to take in order for you to graduate. And this is what it's going to take in order to get your life turned around and to, become physically fit and all that. So he said, like, come in to the office. I'm going to be here. And even if I'm not here, there's going to be someone here. Mm-hmm. Come in, do your homework here, like work out here every day. And that's what I did. I just came in every day. I was doing my packet work there. I was working out there. And because I started to get off of drugs, I noticed that, man, I'm starting to gain weight and I'm starting to look good physically. And like girls are starting to notice. And I'm like, hey, this is nice. Yeah. And so I was able to start like just seeing immediate results just based off of just the change of lifestyle. And it sucks to say that there's a lot of my old friends that are kind of still caught up in those old ways, but a lot of those guys are are different now than they were back then. And they're still some of my best friends. My buddy Wyatt, he's an amazing guy and I still love him. Back then, I distanced myself from a lot of those guys during that time when I was transitioning from being a just punk rock, drug addict to wanting to be a Marine. And so I totally changed my circle of friends, started hanging out with other poolies, and I saw my life just change for the better.
Dude, that's such an amazing story, especially obviously we both have probably heard more negative stories about recruiters. Oh, the recruiter screwed me or whatever. Yeah. But to hear that sort of because to be quite honest, and for those listeners who don't know, when it comes to recruiting, there are categories of potential recruits. And everybody obviously wants to focus on the Cat 1 guys, the guys with the high AVZAB scores, Eagle Scouts, high GPA, high P, IST scores, all that stuff, because they're easy. And so for a recruiter who, as you guys can only imagine, recruiters don't have a ton of time on their hands to really bring you under his wing like that, man. And that transformation, man, it's such a great, uplifting story. And so I'm so happy for you that you got to experience that. Vice, the sort of the Navy guys who just and no necessarily hit on them, but it's just dude, I got a lot. I don't have a lot of time. But I got a lot to do. Yeah,
exactly. And if you were to look at me too, I mean, it's easy to judge a book by its cover. You look at some of these guys and you could basically make a snap judgment and say, if I invest a lot of time in you, I'm probably not going to get the results that I want. But man, I wanted it. And I don't know, he saw something in me that showed that I really wanted it. And because when he asked, he pulled out the little, the trade or what is it?
Yeah, the benefit tags.
The benefit tag, right? You pull out the benefit tags and then we're going over them and then he was like, well, how bad do you want to be a Marine? And I was like, out of a scale of 1 to 10, I was like 11. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, no, really, I need to I want this. And he's like, all right.
Yeah, I'm not just quoting Spinal Tap here.
Really exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mine goes to 11. But it did. I really wanted it.
That's awesome. I mean, that's such a great story. And so next thing you know, you're on the Yellow Footprints. Yeah. Are you just what the hell did I just do? Or are you no, this is exactly what I wanted?
Yeah, it was I brainwashed myself prior to going in. And I use that term because when I said I wanted to change completely, it's there's some people that they say, hey, I want to do this. And then they gradually, they start working out a little bit. And
just ebbs and flows.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it was I did a complete 180, right? My life was going one way and I said, nope. And I changed my friends, changed what I was doing, the whole everything. And so I lived and breathed Marine Corps. If I wasn't doing my schoolwork and if I wasn't getting off of school and getting and my recruiter helped me get a job too, right? And so I got a job and I was working that. And if I wasn't doing that, I was studying my general orders. I was studying everything about the Marine Corps. And so I knew how to there was a stuff the poolies did that you learn how to march and you learn how to stuff the knowledge. Man, I knew it all because I was if I go into the Marine Corps, I don't want to just be a Marine. I want to be the best. Yeah. And they would tell me oh, if you go in, you could be the guide and you could be the leader and you could do this. And I was like, well, that's what I want. I want to do that.
Sign me up. Yeah.
And so when I got to the Yellow Footprints, I was like, this is exactly where I want to be. And I'm going to kick ass.
That's so great. And then, so was it one of these things where as you're going through, and I think I already know the answers. I think you already alluded to it, but I mean, as you're going through, you're loving all of what the Marine Corps is offering at this point. Are you just did you know about, there's MARSOC then. Did you know about at least the recon community?
I knew about recon. MARSOC didn't exist at the time.
Right. Okay. So it was later.
Yeah. So, but I knew about recon and I knew I wanted to just, regardless of what I did in the Marine Corps, I wanted to be the best at it. So, but my mindset was, let me get through this first. I was taking small bites at a time. And
man, you had so much wisdom for a young guy, man. It's crazy.
Well, the thing is that I think I just had a really good mentor at that time. And I wanted to soak it in because I spent years not listening to anybody. And then I saw the result. I was like, well, I just spent years and years of my life not listening to authority, not listening to what these people say. let me give that a shot.
Yeah.
Right. So I started listening to some of my teachers at school and like their wisdom. And I started listening to what my recruiter said. And so it wasn't just my recruiter. It was all these other people in my life that I started remembering things that my mom had told me. I started remembering things that my uncle had told me, and my uncle that was a drug addict, but there was good things that he had told me, and there was good things he'd mentioned.
Yeah.
And then there was good things that my dad had told me, and even my stepdad, whom I hated back then. I was like, I hate this guy.
Yeah.
But he had so much wisdom that he taught me that I was like, I'm starting to apply it now. And at the time, I told him he was the dumbest thing, he's like bag of rocks, right? But and so I started just to apply those things. And so when I got to boot camp, I just wanted to soak all that knowledge in as well. And so whatever the drill instructor said, I was like Forrest Gump, like, because you told me to, drill sergeant, right? But for real, I was like, dude, I'm going to do this because it's what I stopped listening, or if I listen to these guys, I know I'm going to be on the right path.
Man, that's so great. So, all right. So then boot camp, SOI, then you go to the fleet, or were you already sort of in that sort of recon pipeline?
No. So I went to the fleet and
were you at Pendleton?
No, I wasn't at Pendleton first. So when I initially joined, I was in the logistics field.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so when I joined, there was
so MCT then.
Yeah. Okay. So what ended up happening right before boot camp, this is one thing I made my recruiter so proud. Up until right before I was about to ship, and I broke my arm skateboarding.
Man, the irony.
Yeah,
you're looking at it today.
Yeah, so I broke my arm skateboarding, and I remember walking in with my cast, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I just did not want to tell him, but I'm like, I got to leave for boot camp in a couple of weeks, and here I have a cast on my arm, right? And so, but this is how bad I wanted it, right? Like, even though I had my cast, I was like working out and doing pull-ups, like, while I still had my cast on, and I cut my cast
so that you could grip.
So I could grip it, yeah.
Yes.
And because I was like, man, I really want this, and I was like, I don't want to be weak by the time my cast heals, because they were like, and so, but it changed a lot of things. It changed my MOS. I had a slot, but I was like, I don't care, because I just want to be a Marine, and that's what mattered to me. And like I said before, I was like, when they were initially showing me jobs, I was like, there's jobs,
yeah.
And so I was like, whatever, I don't care what I am. And so I get in there, graduate as a series honorman, high PFT, all that stuff. And then get to the fleet. And I remember the fleet kind of being disappointing.
Weird.
Yeah. The fleet was disappointing because it was like, I knew boot camp was just training, and I knew, like going through like your combat training, all that was just, that's training too. And so people are like trudging through it, and they don't really, want to be there.
Right.
A lot of people do, but I was like, well, once I get to the fleet, it's like, it's on.
Yeah,
I'm going to be around these great leaders that are going to, and then I get there, and I just remember being like, this sucks, because just, you got like 10% that were just like killing it. And then you had like, the general population, but then you also had 10% that were like, just shouldn't be there. I'm like, what are you doing here? And I'm just like, still like in that.
Was it a failure to adapt or whatever?
Yeah. And so it was like a disappointment at first, because I had worked so hard to to me, it was like, I earned being a Marine, like in my mind, not to sound like a narcissist, but in my mind, I was like, man, I really earned this. And this guy's taking it for granted. Like he like kind of earned it, I guess. Like he earned the title, but now he's just slacking off and he's getting fat and whatever. And I was like, that's not right, and that guy's going to go home on leave and tell everyone he's a Marine. Yeah. And I'm like, no, like why, And so I just wanted to surround myself with the best people, and I wanted to be the best. And so when I heard about, MARSOC and all that, I was like, that's my goal. I want to be around those people.
Let's do that. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. Even to this day, like when I am getting a haircut on base, Quantico, they have like they scroll through all their advertisement stuff. You see the MARSOC Raiders thing, you're like, oh man, that is cool.
Okay. And to me, it was like, when people think of like the military, they think of the Marine Corps, they think of like that elite fighting force, and I think for a lot of guys that they see those commercials, they're like, oh, sick. And then they get to their fleet, and then they're like, mopping the floor,
Yeah,
and they're
field
like,
day,
they're field day, and they're like, whoa, where was this in the commercial?
Yeah. They're not gonna put Godsmack overlay on doing field day.
Yeah, the printer jamming, and you're like trying to get your reports. You're like, what is it?
That's hilarious. Okay, so then your first deployment then was as a Raider.
No. I did 3 deployments, not as a Raider. So I did 2 deployments to Iraq, and then I did a MU.
Okay.
And it was on that MU that I finally had the opportunity to put in my package.
I see.
And all that.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough to get attached to a force reconnaissance platoon on that 3rd deployment.
Okay.
So I finagled my way to get this platoon.
Totally.
And it was really cool. It was like a chance, or call it, God, or it was just, I got put in this position where they're like, we don't need a logistics guy here, but we do have this boat team that we're trying this concept, and we got these ribs, and usually we have Navy drivers, but we want to send Marines to the school.
Was that a coxswain school?
Yeah. But it wasn't like the traditional coxswain school where you go to, and you drive like the Zodiacs, right? Like the Cricks. It was like, you go to the Navy, like 7-meter rib course, and then the 10-meter rib course, and then like these SWIC courses and all that stuff, and maritime navigation and all that. So I learned all this stuff about maritime operations and all this stuff, and we were working real closely with the force platoon, and we were getting ready for all the visit board search and seizure VBSS missions.
Yeah.
And that's what we did for that whole workup. And it was awesome. I was like, man, this is great. We were riding Sea-Doos around, going on the boats.
Dude, that's like G.I. Joe, man.
It was cool, man. And we were doing all this VBSS stuff. And then what was really cool was on that deployment, we actually did that real-life mission. We did the Magellan Star mission.
Okay.
And that was really rad because everyone had said, like, yeah, you guys are training for this, but no, we're not, you're not going to do it. It's going to be some SEAL platoon that's going to get this mission if it goes down. And we just so happened to be right place, right time, right off the Horn of Africa. And that distress call went out. Boom, there's 11 hostages on the ship. There's Germans, they locked themselves in. The Somali pirates are right there. You guys are going in. And I'm like, this is awesome, right? And so, because it was almost like it felt so good because there was all these people in the leadership position too that saw us as like the cowboys. Look at these guys.
Because you're the upstarts, right? Like Marines hadn't really been part of the community for very long at this point.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So they were like, oh, these guys are training for this mission that's not going to go down. And then it goes down, right? And so I'm like feeling good. And then I come to find out that they're like, hey, we're disbanding that whole concept. Like, we're not going to have Marines be part of those boat teams or any of that anymore. And I'm like, well, this sucks. I need to like put my package in and go to recon.
Yeah.
And some of those guys on the force platoon were like, don't come to recon, go to MARSOC, because that's where we're going. So they were all putting in their packages for assessment and selection, ANS. And I was like, cool, I'll do the same thing. So I did. And then, and at the time I still knew very little about MARSOC. And it was very like, it wasn't as advertised like it is today. It was like it was
like very much. I remember when that was coming up, like, and they were taking all comers, like commos, comm guys, and I mean, because they were trying to, as you know, like create their own infrastructure, almost like the teams. Yeah,
exactly. And so I didn't really know much about what assessment and selection was. So I was like Googling, okay, what's assessment and selection? And I saw a lot of stuff about Special Forces assessment and selection, which MARSOC modeled it after that. We had, and for those of you that don't know, the Marine Corps wasn't part of SOCOM, Special Operations Command, for years and years. When they stood it up, we've had Marine Raiders stood up in World War II, got disbanded, then Force Recon and Recon stood up, but we weren't part of a Special Operations Command.
Right.
So in 1987, when SOCOM stood up, the Marine Corps was like, nah, we don't want a part of it. You guys can.
Yeah, we don't want some Air Force guy telling a Marine what to do. Yeah.
But what ended up happening is that took us out of the fight for a lot of missions, which Marines we would have excelled at, right? And so come 2004, when Donald Rumsfeld said, no, Marine Corps, you are going to be part of SOCOM. And they did the proof of concept with Det 1, deployed with the SEAL teams, and then 2006 is when it stood up, right? And so it was still pretty brand new. And when I went to ANS, that's when I knew that that's where I belonged. Because like I said, when I went to the fleet initially, and I was like, wah, wah, wah. Yeah, I was like, what is this, right? And not to say that every unit is like that. There's tons of amazing units, right? And then there's some that are not so great. And I just ended up getting that mixed bag. And I also just had this big high expectation of like every Marine being that high caliber, which I'd say majority of the Marine Corps is of high caliber. But there's that top 10% that is like, they're the go-getters, they're the gung-ho.
Yeah.
And I was like, I thought every Marine was like that.
Yeah.
And so, but when I got to ANS, that's when I knew. I was like, I'm around guys that like want to be here. They want to be better.
These are my people.
Yeah. And they're all physically fit. They're all, in the top 10% physically, mentally, all that. And then even out of that group, not everyone gets selected. And I was like, I hope I get selected, right?
Yeah.
And, because even though I was a stud at my old units, and everyone would say like, man, Benjie's a stud, or they wouldn't say Benjie, they'd say, Manibog's a stud, right? But then when I got to ANS and ITC, which is the individual training course, I was like average, right?
So you're around a bunch of other studs.
Exactly. So it was cool to be around that environment where I'm like, oh man, now I really got to turn it up, because now I'm just in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, man, I think there's so many overlays and just other aspects of life.
Mm-hmm.
If you just even look at professional sports,
mm-hmm.
you see college athletes that are just, they look like they're in a different league entirely. Yeah. Then they get to the pros and you're like, you're one of many dudes like that. And so you have to, every level, you have to step your game up, because that's sort of how progression works. Like you move to the next bracket, and you're with a bunch of guys who also move to the next bracket. So you gotta work, you gotta earn it every time.
Yeah.
MARSOC Raider, you're doing awesome stuff. You hit the 15-year mark, and there's another transition that you're facing.
Yeah, exactly. And it came abruptly. Like I thought I was gonna do 20 years. Because once I got to MARSOC, I was like, this is where I want to be. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the mindset was still, it was like an unselfish act, but in a selfish way at the same time. The unselfish act was, hey, I'm putting my life on the line. I'm doing this great thing for the Marine Corps and for my country. But the selfish part was I was putting my family second, right?
Yeah.
And that is like kind of like one of the things that we're obligated to as Marines, right? Is, mission first, and then, but what ended up happening is there was so many times where it's like, I didn't necessarily have to go to this school, or I didn't have to do this deployment or whatever. And I was like, I'm going, I want to do it. And because anytime there was something that would make me more lethal or advance, my future opportunities, I was like, I want to be on it. I want to do it. And so that drive was good in that sense, but also negative in a sense to where it had negative consequences on my family life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time I had 4 kids, and my wife and I had been married since 2007. So we'd been married for quite a long time.
She's been on a long ride. Yeah.
She'd been through a lot of deployments and a lot of stuff. And I'd say even going through ITC, I'd consider that being a deployment, because it was 9 months and she stayed in California while I did that.
Oh man.
And then there were some schools that we did that were 4 months long, 2 months long. And I would come back from deployment, go to that 2-month school, be home for 10 days, go to that 4-month school, and then do workups. So it's like most of the time at MARSOC, I might have been head to pillow 2 to 4 months every year, right?
Jeez, yeah.
And so it was tough. It was really tough on the family. And yet I still was like, dude, 20 years, I want it. I want to get as many deployments in. I want to just get after it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like kidney failure runs in her family, right? Her dad passed away from it. Her grandpa passed away from it. Her uncle has kidney failure. But I in my mind, I was like, well, it's not gonna
The second generation.
It's like, yeah, it's good, right? And because her older sister has been fine from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was on that deployment, and right before I went on the deployment, she was having some issues. And but I was like, okay, I think it'll be good. We're catching it early. On that deployment, she's like, hey, my kidney function went from 50%, now it's at 30%.
Oh my gosh.
And it's continuously declining, right? And so she had to do a kidney biopsy. This midway through the deployment. We were doing some counterterrorism operations in Yemen, and we were a small team out there. And I was like, well, I gotta leave, and I'm I'm in this leadership position on my team, and I was like, I don't know if I want to pull myself out.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, but I need to, right? I need to go back home. I need to do this, be with my wife while she does this kidney biopsy, right? So I came home, was home for like a week, and then went through that process, and then I deployed back. And it was right when I came back, it was like my mindset had changed. It was like where I was like, go, go, go. I was all about the mission and what we were doing to, I need to start thinking about my family. I watched as I came home, and my daughter, who was 10 at the time, just busting into tears when I surprised them at the door. And I had always, she'd been through a lot too. I mean, she was born on my second deployment. I didn't even get to see her born. And then she did all that time. And so she's affected the most from it. But I felt it when I came home and I saw that. So when I came back on deployment, I was just thinking about that moment of like her crying and how I'm going to have to go through that again. Right. And then I was thinking about my wife, and if she were to pass, like how it'd be with just me raising the kids on my own. And I had all these thoughts going around that I never thought about before. Because you think you're invincible when you're young and dumb and you're in the Marine Corps, you don't think of all these things happening. And I started thinking about that stuff. And so I was like, well, what can I do when I get out, right? And even though I was like confident talking to others, I was like, you know what, if we get out, I know we'll be okay because, we're special operators. We find a way, we'll do it, right?
Yeah, right.
But deep down, I was scared. I was like, I'm at the top of my game right now. I'm a special operator. I've done all these achievements, and then I'm going to get out, and all those best days are going to be behind me. And it's, it's like being a professional athlete, and then all of a sudden your career gets cut short, and you're like, well, who am I now? Yeah. Right. And it's like, you look back and you say, this is what I've done. And now what? Right? Yeah. So all that was going through my head, and I was kind of felt like I was losing that purpose. But at the same time, I was like, I need to focus on the family. So when I got back, it was tough, trying to deal with all those different things. It was all compounding. And unfortunately, my wife's kidney function continued to decline, and it went down to 15%. And right now she's waiting a transplant, but it was a very scary time right at that moment.
God, that's so crazy. Yeah, I mean, I know from like my standpoint and how I can relate and how that resonates with me. It's like, I would almost rather do a 2-man stack into a hostel room than try to be a husband and father, by myself, like without a support network, like that, the idea of being, sort of alone and unafraid, deployed. Yeah, I got that. I've been through the training. I've got experience doing these things. I know there's the workup cycle, but hey, take the kids for the afternoon. I'm like, what do I do?
We don't give, and we say this all the time, like, oh, the wives they're amazing, but we really don't give them enough credit because we joke around like, oh, we're doing the hard stuff. We're just back home. But when you really flip the role, and if you're, by yourself with the kids, especially, I got 4 kids, there'd be days that like when she was gone, she went on a couple of women's retreats that she well deserved, right? Yeah. She deserves to be gone for years, right? Right. Her own thing. But she'd be gone. And I remember that week that she was gone on that women's retreat, I was trying to cook, and then the kid's naked, and I'm like, why are you naked? And there's a kid climbing up on something. I was like, this is chaos.
Get the dog out of the toilet. What's happening here?
Yeah, right. And so in my mind, I'm like, if I was deployed right now, it'd be way easier if I just had a ruck on my back. Yeah. And I was just like,
Well, because there's no boot camp, there's no SOIMCT, there's no like all of these advanced courses for parenting.
Yeah, exactly.
You just, and then, you know, you're that cohesive unit and then one person goes away. Anyways, but dude, I mean, that is such a, you know, you hear stories a lot that way. And usually, at least from my experience, it's usually like a Marine will have something will happen with one of their kids.
Yeah.
But rarely do you hear about it with the wives or with the spouses. And so, man, that's got, I totally, when you say like you were scared, it's like, that's visceral for me. Cause
yeah. And the thing that kind of, I don't know, I was a little bit surprised to hear this because the command was surprised, right? Like, even though they knew what was going on, and this is, I don't speak for the whole command. Like my commander and sergeant major, most of the top leadership were amazing, but there was a lot of people in the command that were surprised when I said, I'm getting out. Mm-hmm. And they're like, why? You're a gunner sergeant and you're at 15, like no one gets out.
right. Yeah.
And because I wasn't thinking retirement, I was thinking, because Terra is like that temporary early retirement system thing. Mm-hmm. Most special operation guys, EOD and human, like a lot of these like critical skill jobs that they pay a lot of money to create us. Mm-hmm. We don't qualify for those programs because they spent so much money on us. They're like, we don't want you to leave early. Yeah. Right. So in my mind, I'm like, that's not an option. And I was like, well, I'm not medically jacked up. I felt like I was still performing well and everything. So I was like, well, I'm not going to get medically retired. So I'm just really going to walk away with nothing. Right. But to me, I was like, family is important and my kids are important and I need to like focus on the things that matter. And it was mind-boggling to a lot of folks because they're like, you're going to give up all this. Yeah. And you've worked so hard for this. Now you're going to throw it away. And to me, I'm like, I'm not throwing it away. I'm doing the right thing because I get to spend this time that I don't know if tomorrow's going to exist. Right. Like tomorrow's not guaranteed. And who's to say that my wife doesn't pass tomorrow? Right. Or that, you know, something happens to my kids. Like, I want to be there for them now. I've had this different mindset and I want to change it.
Dude, that's so honorable. Yeah. But so they did eventually.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is they got me through the process of getting Terra approved, which I'm so grateful for because I was ready to walk away with nothing. Now I'm retired, right? And so it was just a huge blessing that the command was able to look at my circumstances, really fight for it and push for it, and that just really goes to show, you know, what great leadership could do. Because there's a ton of other people that have been in my circumstance in the past that just didn't have the right leaders, and I'm just like, no, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Right. I had great leaders and great people that were looking after me and wanted to see my transition go smoothly. So I'm just so grateful for that.
Yeah, dude, Semper Fidelis, right? Always faithful. Exactly. I mean, big foot stomper for leaders out there. Listen to this story because you don't just have to give up. Yeah. Like your default setting shouldn't be no. Mm-hmm. It should be yes, but you know, maybe that's the answer. But yeah, we don't let Marines, even if they're walking away, we don't let them just.
Yeah, and we care so much about building a team up and building that Marine up, that individual up and the team up to be successful while they're in. It's like we should have that same mindset to build them up and be successful while they get out too.
Absolutely.
Because they're also a model for everyone else that's serving and for people that haven't served yet. Because it's like, hey, I don't want to. If I'm looking at a veteran who's just, you know, a pile of crap, and at one point he was kicking ass in the military, why would I want to join the military to go through all this just to end up, you know, on the streets?
Right. Just forgotten.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think it's super important. It's critical that we take care of the guys getting out.
Absolutely. So, but then you didn't just sit on your laurels. I mean, so clearly things at home were still precarious.
Yeah.
But what was next then?
Yeah.
So were you just like, holy crap, what the hell do I do now?
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't sure what to do. And in my mind, I was only looking at the hard skills, right? I was like, okay, tactics, right?
Yeah.
I was a special operator.
Yeah.
This is what I know, right? I know tactics, how to shoot and all that. And I'm carrying a gun for the last 15 years. Let me find a job that does that, right? And that's all I was thinking about.
Yeah.
That's where my mindset was at. And a lot of military guys do that, right? And at the same time, I also wasn't ready to give up all that fun.
Sure.
Because to me, that was fun stuff. And I was like, well, could I do that, but also come home every day?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at different options, and Border Patrol was they're heavily recruiting, and I was like, well, let me look at Border Patrol. They also have a BORTAC team, which is like their tactical, like SWAT kind of
sure,
special operations.
Yeah.
So I'm like telling my wife, like, yeah, I'm gonna be home more, but I want to be in this team, right?
Yeah.
I'm like trying to weasel my way in.
Right.
But I get hired by Border Patrol, and I have a date to go to the academy, and I'm like, cool, I'm set. Transition complete, right?
Yeah, nailed it.
Yeah, and so, but I hear about this opportunity for special operators called the Honor Foundation, and I watched a couple other guys go through while I was getting ready to transition, and I'd see them on social media, and they're like wearing suits, and they got like a little pin, and they're like, we're the Honor Foundation, and they're called fellows, like we're a fellow with the, and I'm like, a fellow, I'm like, what's this? Like some secret cult.
That's right.
And so I'm like, but I'm watching the people that they're meeting, and they're meeting like CEOs, and they're going all these places, and they're like, I could just tell like the way they transitioned from being like a knuckle dragger to like just this professional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that guys at MARSOC aren't professional. They are, and they're of high caliber and able to.
But it's a profession of arms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and at the same time, I'd say MARSOC, you have to be a warrior diplomat as well.
Sure.
Brief ambassadors and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just still like, the guys, right? You know the guys on the team and how they are, and you're like, you're a grunt at heart.
Yeah.
But then you see them out there, and they're wearing the suits, and they're just like, you're like, hey, that guy looks like he belongs in corporate America.
Yeah.
I was like, I wasn't ready for that, but I kind of want to know what that's about. And so I looked up the Honor Foundation, applied, got accepted, and holy cow, life-changing. Like I got there, and day one, I was like, this is unknown territory,
mm-hmm.
but I kind of like it. I got comfortable with being uncomfortable in the special operations community. But now I'm just around these folks that just mentors and coaches and just people that were like, want to see you succeed, and not just succeed professionally, but personally too.
Mm-hmm.
And just like change your mindset of like just being a better person, like holistically. And I remember it was like day 2, we had this guy named Joe Sweeney. He was like one of the, I don't know, he's involved in like the NFL, right? And he was one of like Brett Favre's like, I don't know, like agents or whatever.
Okay.
I can't remember the official title. I'm probably butchering it. But this guy, he had this saying, he was like, make someday be today, right? And while I was going through the Honor Foundation, or those first couple of days, they were talking about like sharing our personal stories and all this stuff. And I had suppressed all that for years, like all the stuff before the Marine Corps, suppressed.
Yeah,
I was like, nope, this is who I am today. Boom, forget about it. Bottled it up inside. Everything I did in the Marine Corps, I'm like, if it's like, weakness leaving the body, right? I'm just like,
that's right.
I'm like, suppress all those feelings, And then I got there, and then they were just talking about stuff, and it was like, all of a sudden I started thinking about my past, and I was thinking about just deployments. I was thinking about all the stress, and then my wife and everything else, and it was like, I was like trying not to tear up. And it was like, I was in a room full of Navy SEALs and other special operation guys. And it was like my time to like present something about my make someday be today. And I just lost it. I like was starting to cry, and I was like, oh, my dad. And I remember like everyone kind of looking like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And in my mind, I'm like, I look like an idiot right now, but I
can't stop. Yeah.
I couldn't stop it, right? And I remember sitting back down, and I'm just like, oh man, I feel so foolish. But afterwards, like so many people came up to me, and they're like, I'm glad you shared that. I'm like, that was awesome that you did that. And it was awesome that you got vulnerable. It was awesome that you shared that information, and there were so many people that were like, you should see this person, or you should go talk to this resource. And I did. I got help, and I went through an intensive outpatient program like 6 months and went through therapy and like shared my past and shared all this stuff. And it like really helped me out. But all that would have happened way later if I didn't go through that program.
Yeah. Or something else would have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like those old like beer nuts cans had like the springy snakes inside of it.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, once you pop that top, man, those fucking snakes are coming out, man.
Yeah.
So,
and what's really cool about the Honor Foundation is they focus on the individual first. They say, let's find out who you are as a person first. And they really dove into like what my personal interests are and all these things. And what was really cool for the first time in a long time, where it was like mission focused, team focused, all the tactics, all that. Now I was focusing on like, what do I like? What do I like to do? And I started discovering so much more about myself. And that's where I learned my personal why, which is to illuminate the hearts of others so they may rise above barriers. And where I got that from was sharing these stories and thinking about, who is the person I wish I had when I was at my lowest point? And how can I continue to serve others in a way that brings meaning and purpose and fulfillment in my life in the same way as it did while I was a special operator?
Yeah.
And to me, serving others in that capacity and helping lift others out of their biggest trials and out of their battles and helping them alongside their battles, that drives me and gives me purpose. And I could do that. And I don't have to be a Marine to do that. I don't have to be in Border Patrol to do that. I can do that so many other ways.
Dude, that's so profound. Yeah, because I think there's this kind of, and I'm sure it's for special operators even more so, but I know from, this Marine's perspective, there is this idea that like, well, I spent all this time being this like super ambitious, like go-getter, achievement oriented. So of course, when I transition, I'm going to kick ass at transitioning or I'm going to kick ass at whatever. And there's the same sort of veneer. And you end up going down the same paths. You end up just sort of hitting the reset button on stuff. And you never really get that like introspective, like you said, like, what is it that I really want to do? Or like, what is it, how can what I do have meaning other than just adding to my, padding my resume or getting me more accolades. Yeah.
Exactly.
See, that's great. And so that led you then to USC then?
Yeah, that led me to USC.
Much to the chagrin of the Border Patrol.
So I had to tell Border Patrol, like, hey, actually, I'm going to put that on pause. And what's really cool is at Border Patrol, when you get hired, they say, well, here's your academy date. But let's say you postpone it, you have up until, I think it's like 3 years.
Okay.
As long as they don't change their hiring criteria. So as long as they don't change like some of the ways they hire, you're good, you're set, right? And so I was like, okay, well, at least I know I'm set for a couple of years. Let me go pursue this, right? So I pursued a degree at USC, and it was really cool. It was like, I never had any thought that I would go there. I got my bachelor's while I was in, and I'm just going to throw this out there. For those of you that think you have no time in the military to get your degree, you do.
Yeah, right.
And this is coming from a special operator that was deployed a lot, only home a couple months out of the year, 4 kids. You have the time.
Get that education.
Right? In fact, actually the saying was, you never have time, you make time, right? You make sacrifices, not excuses. So when I'd come back from mission on deployment, instead of, like getting a couple extra hours of sleep, I'd do my schoolwork, right? And that's just what you'd have to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so I got my degree while I was in. And so when I was transitioning out, I saw that master's in business program, the MBV, Master's in Business for Veterans. Right. And USC was kind of a dream school of mine, growing up in LA.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a badass school. But I was like, I'll never go there. I'm a piece of crap.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I was like, I'll never find my way there. But this opportunity presented itself, and they were looking for, high quality candidates to apply, and my GPA was amazing. I graduated summa cum laude from, with my bachelor's. And so I was able to get in. And when I was there, it was almost like that program was also a transition program, right? And it's a year-long master's program. You do this program in business, you learn about all the different, areas of business, and to where you could, and they're very focused on entrepreneurship, right? because veterans make great entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And so, but during that time, it was like, it was such a good transition process because I was around like civilian life, but also around a lot of veterans too. Mm-hmm. So it got the mix of both. And it's an amazing program for anyone that has their degree or you're just about to finish your degree. Look into that program at USC. And you don't have to be in the LA area to
so they have an online version?
Well, it was online because of COVID, but now it's hybrid to where you do some stuff online and do your homework, but then you only go to school every other week. So Friday and Saturday every other week. And there were people flying in from Florida, from Wisconsin, from whatever. So you'll have to fly in every other week. But amazing program and the opportunities at USC. I mean, I'm like totally brainwashed by the USC cult, but
it's there. I mean,
it's there. The alumni network is
it's there. A real thing though. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But and that and leaving there, that's what gave me that mindset of I don't have to work for somebody. I don't have to just,
fill a cubicle
somewhere, right? And I had all this drive to do something, and they focused really heavily on entrepreneurship, and you learn all about the different aspects of business. I was like, well, let me start my own. Let me make this happen.
Man, that's so great. That's so cool. And then, so let's talk about a little bit about what you've got going on now. So you are the CEO of Thrash-N-Raid and the president of 6 Feet Above. Are those the correct titles?
President of the board and chief operations officer for 6 Feet Above.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
were these ideas that you had already had, or is it once you got to SC and you realized I want to do something and, you want to give back, and they just sort of came together and it was like an epiphany, or was this something you've been sort of
So exactly. It was kind of like it all kind of just came together, and the Thrash-N-Raid was kind of one of those the first thought, right? So actually prior to that, I saw that there was a problem within the MBV program, or not the MBV. It wasn't necessarily a problem. It's just that USC has an amazing alumni network. And they had all these different alumni networks for all the other programs. But the MBV program didn't have one yet. It was still fairly new. Like, we were only the 7th cohort. But there was this like need and this want for people to come together. So like after the program has ended, right? And so I was like, well, what if I create a nonprofit that helps, bring people back together, and we could have our own alumni network, but then also the funds that could be raised for scholarships for veterans that have already exhausted their GI Bill, right? And they want to go through this master's program now. And so we were doing that. We raised some funds, and it was awesome. It was such an amazing opportunity, and it gave me a sense of like what it was like to start something from the ground up. And that was not for profit. Right. So I was like, well, now I got to figure out what I want to do for profit, right, so I can like survive. Right. And so I've always been into skateboarding as a kid. Like, as I said before, I broke my arm skateboarding. Yeah, right. But I didn't know much about supply chain and all that. And it was right at the height of COVID, July of 2020. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Because in business, the longer you wait and you just analyze and all that, you could try to think your plan is perfect, but you're going to fail anyways, right? Yeah. Just like in the military, right? You could plan all day, but then once the first round goes off, a lot of times, like, you're having to do immediate action drills, and you're adapting, and you're doing all this, absolutely. Your actions change, right? And so with me, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to start it, and I'm going to learn along the way. And I failed so many times along the way. But the difference is I was willing to fail. And that's what makes a good entrepreneur, is that your willingness to fail and learn. Yeah. It's the people that avoid failure that don't succeed. Right. Yeah. You can't be, it's not a place for the risk adverse, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, because like you said, you've got to learn from that stuff rather than sort of shy away from it. Yeah, exactly. And so Thrash-N-Raid was, it was the tool, right, to help my why, achieve my why, and my why, to illuminate the hearts of others so they may rise above barriers. And skateboarding was kind of that thing during that rough period of my life, that was like the one positive thing. I was doing drugs, I was hanging around like a bad crowd and doing all this stuff. And yet skateboarding was kind of that escape, right? It got me out, and I was exercising, I was outside, but it also allowed me to just be on my board and just not have to be stressed under everything else in life. You kind of like all that goes away when you skateboard, right? And then I also was able to connect with some really cool people during that time as well. Teaches you about situational awareness and overcoming adversity, right? Because you're going to fail.
Right, yeah, getting up, yeah.
Right, and trying a trick. And so you learn about how to overcome failure and how to keep going and give it one more try. That's a saying we say in skateboarding, like, one more try. What that really means is like, I'm going to try until I get it, right? Mm-hmm. Your filmer's over there like turning into a skeleton. It's like, you said one more try and you're like, just keep filming, please, right? And so I created this company as a means to show people that, right? And then we used a lot of those funds to give back to kids and to provide skateboards to kids in need. And we've partnered up with foundations like the Poseidon Foundation, who also does a lot of like really cool stuff for female skateboarders as well as like the youth. And so we did a lot of stuff. We were giving skateboards away to the youth there over at Prince Park and Oceanside, really close to Camp Pendleton. We did a lot of stuff with veterans, giving to different veteran organizations. And it was gonna happen eventually to create a nonprofit to focus on that side, right? And I linked up with a guy named Riley Whitcomb, who's also a Marine veteran, and he went through a totally different transition process. The more common one that most people go
tap and tamp and all that stuff.
Exactly. 5 days, boom, don't let the door hit your butt.
Yeah, here's your resume. Yeah.
Exactly. And he was going through his own struggle, or his own battles, right, with his demons. And what ended up happening is he was about to become a statistic, right? Like, he had seen some of his friends get out, commit suicide. And then he felt like, man, that's my only way out too.
Jeez,
like, my wife and kids are better off without me. And he attempted to commit suicide. His wife found him on the floor, thank God, and got him the help he needed. But the VA, unfortunately, a lot of their answers to a lot of things, because they deal with so many people, is like, here's some pills, right? Here are the pills to help with the therapy. And that's not to say that everyone's taking pills, go ahead and throw away your pill bottles. There's a reason for them. And a lot of times, like, it does help a lot of people. But unfortunately, a lot of people get reliant on those pills, or those pills end up having negative side effects that make the patient feel worse.
Right. It's too much of an immediate response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the answer, the cocktail of pills. And I went through the same thing when I was going through therapy. They gave me all sorts of cocktails of pills to help. And it did make me feel worse for a while too. But he reached out, told me his story, and said, I want to create this thing with skateboarding. I see what you're doing with Thrash-N-Raid. Let's work together. I need some help with this. And he had that vision for 6 Feet Above, to connect veterans, to provide a support network for veterans through skateboarding, so they may shred the trend on veteran suicide, right? Just like it helped him and it's helped me, let's do that for other people. And so he was brainstorming, and he had like these grand schemes, like, we could have these retreats, and like we'll fly veterans out from all over the country and make this happen. We'll meet with pro skaters. I was like, cool, what pros do you know? And like, how do you get funding? He's like, I don't know anybody. And so
I'm the ideas guy.
Yeah. And so I'm like, me neither, And so, but I knew how to start a company and how to just go for it.
Yeah.
And so we both just like planned, or just like created a plan. We were reaching out to folks, and we just said, we're doing this. And it's kind of like what's that movie, like Field of Dreams? Like, if you build
yeah.
So we just kept saying, like, we're gonna do these retreats, and we're gonna like meet with pro skaters and all that. I had no contacts with any pro skaters. I started a skate company, but we were a small company.
Yeah.
I didn't know any pros. It's not like I called Tony Hawk and be like, hey, what's up, man?
Like, Bones Brigade. Yeah.
I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but we were like, we're gonna do this with these pros, and like, because we were saying it, like, pro skaters were like reaching out, and they're like, hey, like, I want to be part of this thing. So we're like,
you need a pro, I'm a pro.
So we're like, here they come, right? not in a sadistic way.
Right.
But we were like, hell yeah, it's coming together. And we didn't have the funding or anything, but we had a credit card. And I was like, let's just do a retreat, and we'll just fly some people out. And I think if we just show that we could do one, the funding will come.
Yeah.
And then we did one, and it just, dude, this is like amazing, right? We had nothing planned, right? We're like, well, we could just go to this skate park, and then we could do like this kind of therapy, and we could do this. And there's stuff that we learned from my experiences with cognitive behavior therapy and stuff. I was like, okay, we'll ask these questions, we'll do this group discussions and this and this. But we didn't have any plan to like meet any pros because there wasn't anybody on the docket.
Yeah.
And then the Airbnb that we booked, they found out who we were, and they're like, oh, you guys are a skateboarding nonprofit? Well, for veterans, cool. We're gonna donate that for free to you guys, the Airbnb. And we're like, oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah, that
like,
is
awesome.
amazing.
Thank you. Not just that, they're like, we know people in the skateboarding community, and we want you to go to this private event. And we're like, oh, awesome. So they're like, here's the address, here's what it is. Didn't know much about it. We're like, okay, I know it's a private event. There's gonna be some people there. It'll be cool. We show up there. It's like this place in Vista. I'm not going to say whose house it is or where it is, but we go to this house in Vista, and there's like, you could hear a crowd and it's like in a neighborhood. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, like whose house is this? We go back there, and there's a giant half pipe in the backyard, and there's like an announcer, there's like a crowd, and there's like, and it's all these pro skaters and their families and all this stuff, and they're having this like backyard event. And I look up, and Tony Hawk is on the half pipe, and I'm like, what? Like, what is this? And all these guests are thinking that, like, we didn't tell them that we didn't have this plan.
Yeah.
And so all these guests that we brought for this first event are thinking like, wow, this organization is awesome. They planned this thing.
Plugged in.
Yeah, and we're like, yeah, here it is, right? And Christian Hosoi and like Sky Brown was at the time, she was on the ramp too, the young Olympian, right? And so there's all these pros there. And I'm like, this is going awesome, right?
Yeah.
And then so Tony Hawk comes down, he meets everybody, and we take pictures with them, and we take pictures with all the other pros, and it was just an amazing weekend, right? That we had.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it was just because we were like, let's do it, and then it just like fell into place. And then after that first one, it was like all these other pros started reaching out, and they were like, I want to do it. And then we started going to these other facilities. Like we ended up meeting with Ryan Scheckler and at his place, and we went to OC Ramps and met with Mark Appleyard and I might be throwing these names out that might be foreign to people, but these are like legendary
Google
pros,
them, for sure,
right? And then Jamie Thomas from Zero, he created Zero Skateboards. He reached out, and we were meeting with him, and it's just so amazing that there's communities out there, regardless of what you're into. There's people that care about veterans and people that want to support, and you just have to like go out there and do it,
Well, I'm sure there's a certain sort of apprehension even on their part where they want to do good, but they just don't know how. Like, who do I reach out to? Exactly. What belly buttons do I push? Is there even such a thing out there?
Yeah.
And so when you kind of, like you said, like build it, they will come. Once they realize, hey, there's an avenue. This is exactly the thing that I want to be a part of. Yeah,
and it was very safe too for skateboarders as well, in the sense of like in that community. The skateboard community and military community are very different, very similar in the same. Different because they see us as like, hey, they're combat focused, guns and all that stuff, and they're like, nah, I ain't part of it.
Right.
But the thing that makes us similar is the community sense. There's that sense of belonging, in that when a skater falls, like, you help them up. And when a skater's struggling with something, like, you teach them and you help them. And a lot of people don't realize that when new guys are getting into skating, they're like, I don't want to go to a skate park because I'm going to look like a fool and people are going to make fun of me. When that's not the case at all. We've had guys go on retreats, and I've seen people try to drop in on a half pipe not a half pipe, but a quarter pipe for the first time. And everyone will stop what they're doing to cheer that person on, help them. There's been people like, let me hold your hand and do it. And like, this might seem foolish, but I'm going to help you. And it's cool to see.
Dude, that's awesome.
And in the military, you have that, right?
Yeah.
When someone's struggling, you lift them up. And so they saw what we wanted to do and how they are with the skate community, and we combined the two. And that is a testament to Riley Whitcomb's vision, right? Or the one who thought of this idea.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
My involvement was just to help run operations and make these connections happen and to start coordinating these events, and then use Thrash-N-Raid as like one of those platforms that we had already gained a big following to start pushing it out there. And then now we donate proceeds to that as well.
That's so cool. And so I guess talking about sort of that dichotomy between the various cultures. You at Thrash-N-Raid weren't necessarily all that well received when you first tried to launch, right?
No, yeah. Initially, people in the skate community were like, we got messages daily from people that were like, stay out of the industry. There's no room for military culture. There's no room for veterans here. Like, get the hell out of here, right? And I was like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Because if you ever want to just like if you ever want some negative attention, just go on social media and just like type in something controversial, right?
Yeah.
Apparently military and skateboarding was that.
Yeah.
And so
who would have known?
It was like just the haters came out of the woodwork. I was like, how are you guys finding me? You know, I'm like brand new. And they found their way. And but what was really cool was that there were some other skate companies that were veteran owned that were out there, and they're doing some good stuff. And I'm just gonna say like DB Skate Designs. He's a skater out of Colorado. He's an Army veteran, and he creates and shapes his own skateboards. Amazing stuff. Tragic Skate Co. I think he's Air Force veteran. But he's up in California too. Awesome, giving back to the kids. And so there was other skaters that were doing it. And for me, I was like, well, I want to do the same thing, but on I don't know. I was dreaming big.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just be this small town veteran skate company.
Right.
I wanted to be like the Black Rifle Coffee.
Yeah.
Skateboarding
the New Bones Brigade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with the Raid Brigade. You know?
Yeah, Raid Brigade. Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And so I think a lot of it though is like, whereas you obviously have to have a large sense of humility. And like you said, I mean, you have to have that willingness to fail because for one thing, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But these are also tremendous learning opportunities. But at the same time, you can't let yourself get detracted from whether it's initial failure, peers, competitors who are trying to tell you what you're doing is all jacked up, right? Like, you just you got to push through some of that.
Yeah. And
so I guess, where's that line though, between where you're like, hey, this came from the good idea theory, or no, this is actually my calling.
Yeah. And so when I started to realize that it was my calling is when, as much negative mail that we got 100 times more of the positive. And it kind of came naturally. Like I'm a very, like, positivity is one of my core strengths. Like, I've always been a positive guy, like, after I joined the military, because I had that mindset of just like, I want to help people. I want to do stuff, and I want to make the situation light. If we're in a stressful situation, I want to bring some positivity to it to help the team get through it. On deployments and training, regardless of what it was, like, I was trying to be that guy. And that's where I got the illuminate the hearts of others part from my why, because in my life, I wish someone would have given me that positivity to pull me through, because there was a lot of people that were saying, you will never amount to anything. And there were people that even told my mom that when I was in school. Like,
man, that's so awful.
A teacher had told my mom, said, your son Benjie will never ever amount to anything in life, right? And there's people telling me that, like, you're a failure, you suck, all this stuff, you're a piece of crap. And so I felt like if I helped tell people, like, you could find the good and you could find the positivity, it's how you respond to your situations that makes a difference. Like, bad things are going to happen to you, regardless if you're the poorest person on earth or the wealthiest person on earth. There's going to be negative things that happen in your life, and it's how you respond to them that really matter. And I was putting out this positive messaging and just motivational stuff, just trying to, like, help people. Just not even, I wasn't focused on, like, buy my skateboards. I was focused on, like, let's just be positive. And then I knew sales would come, because people don't want to just buy from a company because they're like, oh, that's cool products.
Right.
They'd rather buy from a company because it's something that they believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And to me, I wanted to focus on that why of, like, this is why what I'm doing matters, and this is why we're helping people, and because I'm so passionate about it, and I believe in it. And, and whether or not you believe in it too, like, I'm still going to do it. And people they rallied behind that message. And that's when I knew I had something, is because I was receiving messages from people saying I was on the verge of, like, suicide. And this post helped me get through it.
Yeah.
you posted this thing about you having, this battle with your wife's kidney function, or, trying to identify with your kids again, because I was struggling with that, like during that transition process. And I would post about it, being vulnerable about it, and not being afraid to admit my failures. And they're like, I'm dealing with that too. And that helped me. And because of that, I was like, I know this is working. I know it's helping. I'm going to go even harder to it. And I know that there's going to be haters, but I'm not going to focus on them. I'm not going to focus on all the hate. I'm going to focus on the positive stuff, and I'm going to keep driving that way.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to sound trite, and I hope I'm not downplaying it too much, but I think we talked before the show, like there's a lot of other sort of organizations that are doing wonderful things, and there's a lot. I think we talked about like some of the surf stuff, having people go out to the beach and having surf be that sort of outlet.
Yeah.
There's an organization, merging vets and players, we've talked about on the show before. And so then now there's you guys 6 feet above. And I think there's a lot to be said, and especially as it applies to skateboarding, and having been sort of a novice growing up in skateboarding, is that there is I think something to be said for, I can at least get that like brief respite as I'm trying to do an axle grind or some, go down a half pipe or do some sort of gnarly trick, a hand plane or whatever, where I'm so focused on that trick, or I'm so focused on that move, that I at least get, even if it's just 30 seconds, where I'm not worried about all the other bullshit that's going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what's cool about that program is that the skateboard itself doesn't save people, right? It's a tool that allows like all these other things to happen. And one of the biggest things is the connection piece.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these vets feel like they're alone. Like Riley felt
there you
like
go.
he was
Nice.
alone. I felt like I was alone for a while, and I didn't want to tell anybody how I felt. And there's that stigma in the military too, that it's like, hey, you're dealing with a personal problem, like suck it up. Right?
Yeah,
like
right.
take that straw, suck it up, just push forward, right? And then we bottle that up, and then when we get out, we're like, well, why should I burden someone else with what I'm going through? And so we suppress it. And what's really cool about these retreats is that people start opening up, because now they're not just talking to some like 70-year-old shrink that wasn't in the military,
right,
that you're trying to like relate to, and he's trying to like pull this information out of you, like, tell me about your trauma.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, and you're like, I don't want to talk to this guy, right? And he's like, well, here's the pills,
Yeah.
And so with this environment, we make it fun. We make it, something that it is also a challenge too for people that don't skate, and they're learning something new, but then they start hanging around these other vets, and then they start sharing stories, and we do these group discussions, and we prompt questions that get them to think in a different perspective about, what they're grateful for, and how things that they did in their time and service mattered, when in a time when it might seem like it didn't, right? Like we just spent 20 plus years doing the global war on terror, and you could see how a lot of things played out in the Middle East that is very questionable, right?
Sure.
And so a lot of people are struggling with that and battling with those issues of like, I lost friends, I lost a lot of who I am during that time, and I can't get those years back, like family life and all this other stuff. And they feel that they're alone in that, right? And so having these people share that makes them understand, like, I'm not alone. Now I have this support network. I have these people that I can rely on, and I don't have to feel that that I can't open up and express who I am.
The people's identity is more than just the uniform that they're wearing, whether it's flip flops and shorts or full tactical gear or whatever. You are more than the clothes you wear on your body.
And we prompt these questions to them, like when we talk about the past, we talk about where they're at in the present, and then we talk about the future. And I ask a lot of those questions that we got at the Honor Foundation. Like I use those things that I'm like, man, they help me so much. I know it'll help them, and and it has. And one of the things we asked towards the end is like, what's that one thing you've been putting off that you keep saying, someday I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to do that. Make someday be today. What's that thing? So when you leave here, what are you going to focus on? And it's really cool to see. We get people that contact us after, and they're like, hey, remember how I said my someday be today was I was going to reconnect with my brother or my mom or somebody that was I had bad relationships with, well, I mended that relationship. Or I said I was going to start school again, I did. And it's really cool just to hear that and just to see people's lives change. And to me, I'm like, it's worth it. It's worth everything that we've done. And seeing some of these guys that have come from like, man, I thought I was in the hole and I was like a couple steps away from committing suicide. We went to this retreat and this is where I'm at now. This is what I'm doing. Now I have the support network and now I have this new mindset of just like this renewed just drive to achieve like I did before. This new sense of belonging and purpose.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, dude, I so appreciate you being so generous with your time. I do want to mention though, before we cut out here, is that you got an event coming up with Aquabats, right?
Yeah, the Aquabats. Yeah,
dude, the Aquabats. So, it obviously, as a father of little ones, and me also being a father of those, dude. Yeah. Yo Gabba Gabba is still the jam. I can't believe it's not still on the air, but dude, like
actually, it's coming back.
Is it?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I think I might have enjoyed Yo Gabba Gabba more than the kids do. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about what you got going on with Aquabats?
Yeah. So Shred the Trend. This is the second year that we're doing it. So we planned it like in 3 weeks the last year, and we're like, let's just put this event together. And it was really cool. CJ Ramon from the Ramones came out for the last one.
Dude,
yeah, it was really cool, sick, right? Man. And we had like 400 people show up. So like 3 weeks, plan, boom, made this event happen, and we're like, all right, we got to do this every year. And so this year we planned it out, and we reached out to the Aquabats. Do you want to be part of this? And Christian Jacobs, lead singer, creator of Yo Gabba Gabba, amazing guy, was like, yeah.
Because he's a local guy, right? So he's in Orange County?
Yeah, he was in Orange County. He just moved, but he's, he makes that.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so they're going to be there. Steve Caballero, legendary
nice.
Coast Gamer.
Dude, totally, yeah.
OC Ramps is sponsoring, but this whole event is to raise awareness on the positive mental health and why it matters and suicide prevention, and then to raise funds for 6 Feet Above. And so this event kind of just brings all that together. So it's the music, the skateboarding. There's going to be games and activities for the kids. It's an all ages event. There's going to be vendors from the skateboarding side, from the veteran side, veteran resources there. It'll be an incredible time, and it starts at noon, ends at 8 p.m. And
it's Impala, right?
Yeah, it's Impala. It's on a private land, so it's 20,000 square foot warehouse with like a bunch of land around it too. So it'll be a super rad time, and anyone can come, even if you don't skateboard. Come just to meet other veterans. Come just to like have a good time with your family, with your kids. There's gonna be all sorts of stuff, and the tickets are $35, and every penny of that goes to support the organization of what we're doing, and it's all inclusive, right? So it's like you buy the ticket and you have all the activities, you have the concert, you have the skateboarding, all that, right? So the only thing you'll have to pay for is food, right? So there's going to be food vendors there, but it'll be such a rad time. And the tickets, you go to Thrash-N-Raid.com, you go to 6feetabove.org. And if you can't make it, please share with other veterans in the area about the event, and contribute by donating at 6feetabove.org.
All right, man. That's awesome. So, yeah, 6feetabove.org, Thrash-N-Raid.
.com.
.com.
So, yeah,
is it?
Thrash, it's the Thrash and then the letter N.
Okay.
Raid.com.
All right, fantastic. So, Benjie, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for sitting down with me. This is an awesome time that I'm really, really geeking out right now. So,
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. I am Nick Wilson. That is Major Vic Ruble, U.S. Marine Corps retired. We have also heard the voices of or contributions from William Treuting or Nancy Lichtman, editors of Gazette and Leatherneck magazines respectively. Opinions expressed in Scuttlebutt are just that, opinions, and do not represent any official stance of the MCA.